Run! Go! Get to the Jibber Jabber!
Okay, who wants to say grace?
I'll do it. Dear Lord, thank you for giving us the gift of our sexuality.
Thank you for a lovely evening.
Okay, I'll get dessert.
Paulus, thank you very much for coming on the Jibber Jabber. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Your movie, Best Thanksgiving Ever. It was a little surprise. It was I'd never heard of it, and
neither had I.
And obviously we knew it was on Amazon Prime, but we couldn't get it here, so you were nice enough to send us a private Vimeo link to watch it, and I really enjoyed it, man. It was a fucking funny movie. When did you start? When did the idea for that movie kind of come to you? Because you obviously wrote it and produced it. So go back to the beginning of the idea.
One of the first frames, do you want me to get into this now?
Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. The first frame of the film, it says based on a bunch of shit you just can't make up, right?
Yeah.
That's, it's the first comedic attempt in the film. However, it's based on a true story. And this film is based on a true story. And I've been at odds because I usually don't disclose publicly what that true story is, but privately, if I meet people, I'll tell them the most outrageous thing in the film that you would never imagine would even be the true story is the true story. It's the guest house scene and the squirt scene.
No way.
So, way.
We need evidence.
So just to give you a little backstory, because I know no one in my family is going to hear this. In 2008, right? I'm not a writer. I'm an aspiring actor at the time, but that has nothing to do with this. It's just where I am in terms of the creative process. So I leave Michigan in 2005 to go to New York. A year and a half later, I'm in Los Angeles trying to find my ass with both hands of how to navigate the entertainment industry. So finally, you make friends and you build a little community or whatever. And I did some work at that point, but up until 2008, I was still sort of in the figuring out stage. Hadn't done a lot. I did some TV. So Thanksgiving of 2008 rolls around. My brother, who is 7 years my senior, is supposed to come to Los Angeles to spend Thanksgiving with me, but he also has a mutual friend that he went to college with, living in LA, that I'm an acquaintance of, and then a friend up north who is in the film Larry and his new girlfriend Margaret. But for the sake of the innocent, I will not disclose their real names, but they're pretty close. Lawrence and Martha. Anyway, so they come down. Everyone's going to spend Thanksgiving, right? We're going to just drink. And Thanksgiving, people don't understand. People know what Thanksgiving is around the world, but people don't really understand. It's a slob's like paradise. It's just you eat like a fucking pig and you watch American football and you watch a movie. That's Thanksgiving. It's literally you dress like an asshole. That's it. We were dressed pretty nice in the film by all accounts. So in any event, we end up, my brother doesn't make the trip. This is real life, obviously not in the film. He doesn't make the trip. He has a completely different movie in the making of a personal disaster. So he fucked up and he couldn't make it. I end up entertaining his friends. These guys are acquaintances of mine. So long story short, we go to this Brazilian restaurant. I don't know if you guys have in your neck of the woods, called Fogo de Chao, and just eat a Brazilian barbecue. It's just like 15 pounds of meat in one sitting. So we have a gluttonous good time. Then we start drinking, and we are at a guy who I played in the film. His name is Weber, Chris Webber. He's the guy that I play. We're at his guest house where he lives with his future fiance at the time. It was just his girlfriend. And we're drinking and watching football, and all these things unfold, which I don't need to explain. It's literally verbatim what happened in the guest house. Like, that was in 2008. So we lived through that. And in real life, there was no real 10-yard squirt, but all the dialogue was real and the action was real. So for the sake of dramatization, we had to add a 10-yard squirt, and obviously it's very funny and effective. So anyway, I'll end it here basically saying, in real life, it was a bit of an underwhelming ordeal that took place, but in actuality, the dialogue, that wasn't my dialogue. That's Weber's dialogue. You can't squirt 10 yards. That's a first down. All these football innuendos. And I had my part, but essentially I would have been Kevin in the real life scenario. I just didn't catch my love of my life banging, my muscular fitness model friend the day before. It's just, that happened to me 3 years earlier.
Do you know
that scene happens, and then I end up going a year and a half later. I start reading about screenwriting, and I start realizing I have to do more. And what I did was I wrote that scene. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And then I'll save some more explanation I'll let you guys have a chance. But that's the genesis of how, like, that's the best Thanksgiving ever. Where did this thing come from? Because Weber and I were looking at each other. We went to bars afterwards. We got fucked up, and we're looking, this is the best Thanksgiving ever. And it was fun, but I mean, never thought we would have gotten money together and made a picture about it. So,
of all the things in the movie that I was going to ask you if they were true to life, that was not the one I thought was going to be true. The one I had in mind was what was his? I think his character name is Aquavelva. And
yes, I love him. Costas Mandylor is the guy at the gym.
Yeah. Now that detail, like wanting to beat a guy to death for not putting the dumbbells back on the rack, like that's the type of thing where I thought, yeah, that's a true feeling that he's put into this movie, not the squirt.
There's actually our latest episode went live tonight, right? And in that episode, we talk about the best Thanksgiving ever for our audience to kind of go and check it out. And the one part actually had me knotted because we were talking about it, right? And this was me telling Jordan before he'd actually seen it. And I says, so what would you do, right, if you walked up towards your window and you saw your missus getting smashed off another guy? And tell him your response.
I said, well, once I'd finished, I would go in and confront them. And Kevin nearly died laughing. And that was just talking about the film. That wasn't even watching it. But yeah, it was the look on Kevin's face in the movie. That's movie Kevin. Yeah, movie Kevin. The look on his face at that moment, I think, Kevin, you described it as just defeated. And what's so funny is up until that moment, even the way he walks, he's like the happiest guy in the world.
He's optimistic.
Yeah, the eternal optimist. Must be a Kevin
what's really funny, and to your point, how funny you guys had a moment when you gave him that brilliant response after I finished. You saw in the outtakes, it was hard to get that shot done because that was the first take. Is Kevin walks up to the window and he loses his shit laughing. He's like, "This is so ridiculous," But at the same time, it's like Kevin that you knew walking up to the window was never the intention. What you saw, what you were gonna see or was supposed to see with the original cut of the film, as it was scripted. That's the first scene of the film, is Kevin pulling up in his car, pep in his step, chipper, and walks up to the window. That's where it began. The whole scene before, where you get to understand Kevin's the guy's guy, and he's on top of the world, and Brad's a pain in the ass, just what we call in America a red ass, just always in a bad mood, at odds with the world. All that shit, that was a pickup shot to justify a lot of loopholes and elements in test screening. So just FYI.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I see.
Well, it works. Obviously, you get a little bit of context with it.
Yeah, I really liked the opening. The opening dialogue where everybody's in the bar. It gives that's one thing I'd taken a note when I was watching it, and it was that it's very, from the beginning, very dialogue driven, but it's not dialogue where you're like, you're very much attached to what's going on. You know what I mean? I think that's maybe an art form in itself, trying to kind of have conversation flowing where you keep people interested. You know what I mean? I think this is coming for two podcasters.
No, but you know what? But listen, you guys are speaking such an inherent truth. And listen, we're gonna dip in and out, I'm sure, of sort of like hijinks and slapstick analytics, and then some philosophical realities. And the fact is, any ego I ever had in 2013 when the cameras were rolling, literally right now, 2013, we were filming Best Thanksgiving Ever. And just to show you from an independent filmmaking standpoint how long it takes to see these things through, which most of them don't ever get to the stage that we got, which is a huge moral victory for me and also the people involved in the picture. But what you observed, yes, it's a very dialogue-heavy scene, and for the most part, a dialogue-heavy film. But the problem with modern-day comedy, and dare I say modern-day cinema today, and this is a little highfalutin, but there's some truth there. I know good dialogue because I've lived enough life and had enough bullshit and hijinks and watching squirt scenes and participating in them and all kinds of stupid shit. The things that happen community-wise around a pub, right? Around tables and around the bar, the stories that are exchanged, the events that happen, the fights, the victories, the defeats, whatever. These are the things that make life and make relatable story elements and things. And the conversation that we have in Best Thanksgiving, again, going back to not having an ego because it's been beaten out of me getting through this project, I know good dialogue. And so that dialogue is the strong suit of the film, in my opinion. Now I'm doing the Donald Trump thing with my hand. So that dialogue is, I think, a strong suit. And I'm glad that, it resonated well with you. But I think that's always been a thing, is that people say, wow, I've had this compliment many times, or observation. Not a lot of movies, they don't talk like this in a lot of movies. Yes, because you got pencil pushers who literally married the first girl they slept with, and they, like you guys, and they end up writing screenplays in Hollywood with no life experience from the standpoint of being able to really relate to the consumer. That's the big flaw in a lot of films today, and especially in comedies, because they're so PC that they find clever ways. They think, oh, some Poindexter thinks this is a funny way to convey. Imagine the squirt scene written by someone else. It would have been a cartoon.
Yeah. I mean,
automatic squirt just shooting around.
Your point about obviously the PC side of things, that film was a breath of fresh air
for us.
Because of that simple reason. It was like there was zero fucks were given about what was getting said and done, and I love that. I love that aspect of it. Everybody's far too careful now, and it's getting to the point where the movie industry is just getting saturated with simple, just obvious bullshit. And it was a nice kind of throwback to the time where people could be a bit more free with what they were doing.
Yeah, I think
it wasn't even that long ago. There just seems to have been a massive shift in attitudes over the last 5-6 years, where I can't even begin to contemplate what's happened to people's minds.
I think Brad was kind of the character that the PC culture would totally be like, right, how do we change him into something else? But what I liked about it, and what I'd said to Jordan as well, is the fact that guy exists. Brad exists. Do you know what I mean? And there's no point in sugarcoating it, because then you're not being truthful to that character. Because this guy is the kind of guy that someone knows someone like him. I know at least 5 guys that way.
That's a lot.
I know at least 5 people that are exactly like that. You see them with like on their Facebook, all lovey-dovey with their misses, and then it's next to game week, the sad posts come up because it's all going on, and you know exactly who's to blame, who's at fault. So I think there's a beauty in kind of staying true to a character that may not be someone that makes us all feel great, or someone that we can redeem, but it's true, and it makes you relate to the story more because this person exists and reminds you of someone that you might know. Yeah,
and it's funny. So initially, while I had written a screenplay before Best Thanksgiving. It was my
Mm-hmm.
first screenplay that I wrote directly off of reading a book called The Writer's Journey, which is based on the hero's journey of, I don't know how up on your mythology you are, or just the genesis of the Star Wars trilogy.
Oh, mate.
But Joseph Campbell, Empire Strikes Back, the best film of all time. Anyway, Joseph Campbell, indeed, I see it, my friend.
Yes, good.
Joseph Campbell, his philosophies about the about sort of like the hero's journey and that classical story structure was what the writer's journey is based on.
Mm-hmm.
So Carl Jung's Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious, this is that in every point in civilization there was a Brad type, a Kevin type, a Sam Robertson type, a Liz type, a Kevin Wells type. It's like that was sort of like verbatim. I wrote this script called The Camel Jockey, which is a derogatory term for an Arab, but it's a funny script that I had. It was my first time, and I'm like, this will one day get made, right? But I wrote scenes for Best Thanksgiving, and what I lacked was a backbone of a story, right? So the guy who came in, really talented guy who advised me and kind of helped me put the Kevin backbone through the story to string the whole events together with, he fought with me tooth and nail about certain aspects like we just discussed. Like he wanted to water down aspects of, he's like, Brad, no one's going to like him. The audience will resent him. You'll lose them. And he wanted to water down, different aspects, squirt scene, Sam Robertson. And my whole argument was, and this is where I basically put my artistic artistic integrity on the whole thing. I said, the thing is, we are living in a day and age where the audience's intelligence has been insulted time and time again, to the point the best comedies that people will ever reference and remember and rewatch are 15, 20 years old from now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're not modern comedies. You have an outlier once in a while. Okay, Hangover has its place.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I can't even think of the names of these films offhand because they're so forgettable, but it's like, I'm not saying I made the Rembrandt of comedies in modern day cinema,
Mm-hmm.
but my film or our film is a PSA on what comedies should be.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my greatest philosophical quotes by one of the forefathers of scripting and screenwriting, he says that comedy celebrates the ignorance of the human condition.
Yeah.
And that's why you have to go for the throat. That's why that's why the film pushes the envelope on racism, misogyny, sexism, LGBTQ, everywhere. But it's all in the context of comedy. And for the most part, every instance where that is exercised, it comes back around to have its karmatic payoff.
Yeah.
And so, that's the thing, is like, he was like, this guy told me, he's like, I'm telling you, Brad's too much of an asshole. You'll lose the audience. And I'm like, okay, but people know Brad.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people, just like you just admitted, that have perfectly functional and great home lives with children. And the second that they have to go on a business trip, they have a whole different set of rules.
Yeah,
In fact, they keep the wedding ring on because they know there's a better chance they'll get laid with it. So
God. There's one thing about
mouthful.
There's the part where I found that I quite liked Brad the most, actually, and this is kind of speaks to the redeeming side of Brad, is when he finds that Sam actually was someone that he knew as a man back at school. And after that whole experience, a kind of guy like Brad you would expect to kind of physically assault, that in that scenario, but instead it was like the brotherhood kind of came back. So as to his faults, there was still a decent guy in there. Do you know what I mean?
It's the handshake that sells it at the
end. Right? Just there is, because they meet up again in the bar and there's just that camaraderie. He no longer sees who he just kind of tried to pick up. He remembers the person that was, and now accepts him for who that person now is. So if anything, the PC culture can look at that and go, well, wait a minute, here's the guy you don't expect to accept someone in that kind of scenario, and he's just kind of gone as far as he can go with that and still accepts it. So really, there is a lot of really redeemable and nice things about Brad that you kind of have to look beyond to kind of see. I would agree. because I didn't finish hating Brad when I finished watching it. You know, I thought there's more to these guys. That's the one thing when I finished watching the movie was there is more to these people. There could be more stories to these people. I kind of felt invested to the point where I was like, right, you know, like when you watch Friends and you get
Go on.
Seinfeld. But when you for a TV show like Friends or something like that, you watch it and you kind of you're a couple episodes in and you're now like, right, I know who everybody is, and you've got that, you know what you expect from everyone. Then you just kind of every time you see it, you see more and you follow them on different journeys. I kind of felt like that was the start of that for me, and that's why I took a note as well. One of my notes was saying that it would be really good to have a TV series. You could come out with a TV series with those characters, you know, and just kind of add more. And that's kind of where it felt for me. It kind of felt that there was more to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think Jordan had something to say, but just to beforehand, based on that whole idea of a TV series, I created a film. I hate saying I've been trained saying we for years, but I'm the only one representing. So I created a film that with a lot of talented people that basically when I decided to move forward with a group of people and do this, I knew that the risk I was taking was we were going down the feature film independent route when feature film had become a cliche and had become a caricature of itself. When Jon Favreau and Vince Vaughn made Swingers, which was very inspirational to certain degrees of budget-wise and how we executed it, when they made Swingers, it came out in 2002. This was the renaissance in the Wild West of independent film. And it was possible to make a film like that. Festivals were accessible because they were still a very artistic, non-corporatized entity. And you could have these things be in the marketplace and then get sold for a few $1 million and get a wide release. Mm-hmm. We would have loved to have seen that happen to Best Thanksgiving. But in hindsight, a lot of people said you should have made an episodic with these characters. To speak to what you just said, Kevin, is that you should have been an episodic. You shouldn't have made a feature film. Well, I didn't speak on that medium, and I still love the film that we made, but that was an idea that people had, and it's certainly in the stars. If I get the right help around me to sort of like structure, because it's a different beast structuring episodic 30-minute serials than a feature film, which is like 90 minutes, give or take.
Yeah. That was something I was going to mention, was the length of the movie, that 90 minutes. That for me, 90 minutes is a perfect length for both a comedy and a horror. I think that 90 minutes is just the right length. Sometimes you get comedies, it might be an Apatow comedy or something you just feel goes on that bit too long and you start checking out. But the 90-minute length is a good thing as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, and it's funny about that. When we initially shot, we had 36 hours of footage, but when we put together the assembly, we had a very talented editor named John Rothel, who was become a close friend of mine because of all the lonely nights we spent together, sweating next to the computer, trying to edit on a budget. We went. John, when he put an assembly together, which is basically just the film in succession, no editing, no finesse, just here's a scene one after another, we only had 78 minutes. Now, to be a market viable feature film, there was a lot of argument internally as to whether this can be a commercial entity at like 72 minutes or 70 minutes, an hour and 10 minutes. And it just didn't sound right, especially for the money that was spent on making this. That's like a long short film, not a feature film. Feature film is 90 minutes or more, give or take. So, we went back in and we had to make some decisions, and there was a lot of creative warfare. I'm missing certain hair follicles because of that creative warfare. But, there was some huge philosophical differences. And ultimately, to your point, we had to squeeze blood out of a stone to get 90 minutes. And part of that 90 minutes was adding the opening scene in the film. So just to that point.
Well, that's pretty, I suppose it's kind of like a blessing in disguise, because I really enjoyed that scene. So
it's one of my favorite scenes, and it was not supposed to be. I mean, it was never like the characters in there. The regret I have if I had several, $1,000 more and more foresight, I wish I could have put those characters back. Earl and what's his name? The degenerate gambler, and then America's Guest.
America's Guest.
Like America's Guest. There's a guy that hangs out at a bar up here, world famous bar called the Rainbow Room. They call him America's Guest because he's never paid for anything ever.
Wow.
He spent $1 one day. He left $1 for a tip for a girl. They took the $1 and framed it up by the cash register. He used to work for Hugh Hefner. This guy, his name was I can't remember his name. Anyway, the guy, that was his nickname, America's Guest. And when I heard that from my buddy Jeff Gazzari, who actually is a very famous lineage of his uncle Bill Gazzari, started Van Halen and a lot of these huge bands in the 80s, in the heyday, in the late 70s. Jeff, he's the one who always used to say America's Guest. When I first heard it, it's things like that. I write it down. Yeah. I'm like, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. America's Guest. It's like, anywhere he goes, he's our guest, right? So, acts like that, I write down. I say, that'll be funny. And then that's a lot of what the collage that makes up a comedy like Best Thanksgiving. I completely abandon your question or what you said, Jordan. What the fuck did you say?
What the fuck did I say? That's $1 million question.
Wait, were we going back to the timing of the film or the opening scene?
I think I was finished. I'd finished my point on the time of the movie. I was going to ask you about the Jesus character, or the hobo Jesus, whatever the fuck he's called.
Hebus.
Hebus.
Oh, you can't say that now. It's non-binary-us.
What?
What do you want to know about him? Because that's a great story, and unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But, yeah, that guy is. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Yeah, I mean, I actually, it's one of these elements where it's almost a risky element to throw into a film. The Jesus kind of idea, especially in that specific scenario, but. Where did that come from? The idea of putting this guy in? I mean, it was an older Jesus, I would say. It wasn't.
I understood him as a conscience. Yeah.
Well, this is where we find out.
Well, to each his own interpretation, which I think is beautiful, because I've already gotten two examples between you guys of what the interpretation could have been. You develop Brad to be this sort of like guy with zero fucks, no limitations, yet you get an idea that he's probably conservative, homophobic, borderline racist. Like Brad is all those things, but yet a lot of people in America who have that reputation have this very strong religious conviction in relationship with Jesus Christ and God, right?
Yeah.
It's, dare I say, and I'm friends with a lot of these people, but I live amongst these people. There's a lot of really crooked rednecks in America. There's nothing wrong with saying that, but like people who are like, I would kill you for stepping on my property, but good Lord, don't use the Lord's name in vain. You know what I mean? It's like, in any event, it was never supposed to be Jesus. That guy, whose name is Kevin Short, was known as Hollywood Jesus. I shit you not, for the first 3 years I was in LA, I would see this guy. He's 6'6". Whatever that is in stones or meters or whatever metric. He's fucking tall, right? He's William Wallace. And in any event, he's always walking around LA dressed like that, with that. He looks like the Anglo-Saxon, American Jesus. Just looks that way. And when I first got to LA, I felt this sense of, outrage. And also, by the way, I'm coming from Detroit, Michigan, where I'm born and raised. I don't know if you guys remember your Beverly Hills Cop, but this is the T-shirt Axel Foley wears. And so I came from a relatively conservative. I lived in New York, but I still wasn't like, at peace, walking hand in hand with all the strange realities of what living in a transient city brings. So I'd see this guy and I'd be so outraged. I never said anything, but I always like, just this motherfucker, how dare you? This is blasphemy. For all we know, he could have been Jesus Christ himself. I drive by this block where he lived, and you'd see Jesus tending to his garden. Literally, the guy was an apartment manager, and he'd be pruning leaves in this like garden outside of the apartment. It's like, this was poetic, but still, it was like hitting me over the head. Then one day, this is about 3 years in, I'm sitting outside of a Starbucks, forgive me in advance, right near my gym, and I'm drinking my, faggoty latte, whatever. That's not going to go well with the PC. And Jesus, this guy, I'm on the phone with someone, and I said, I got to go. I hang up the phone, and I'm just putting on my mean mug, and I'm staring at him. He's approaching. He's going into Starbucks, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, what's up, man? I go, what's going on? He goes, not much. It was just a very congenial exchange. And then I said, what name do you go by? And he goes, well, my mom calls me Kevin. And from that moment, the 3 years of bullshit, I got to talk to the guy, and I was like, that's really funny. Now, that has nothing to do why he's in the film, but over the years, he became a friend to the extent that I'd see him honk. And by the way, this guy drives a Mercedes. I'd see him honk the horn, give him a ride, had meals with him after a bar. We'd have a blast. He's funny as shit. The original intention was not to have Jesus in the film. You remember The Most Interesting Man in the World from Dos Equis? You guys know Dos Equis beer. I don't always drink beer, but when I drink, I prefer Dos Equis.
No.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Okay.
Don't know
That's
that one.
amazing to me. So that's a huge thing in America.
Right.
I'll send you some YouTube clips you must see.
Yeah.
But the original intention was to have him. It's the funniest shit in the world. And then when I talked to the casting director, he's like, to get this guy to show up to set, it's going to cost $2 million. And I was like, oh, we're not there. So the next best thing was, what would be funnier? Because what it was the same thing. Brad's contemplating, should I go this way? Should I cross the threshold? When Sam bites his ear. So when he looks over and he gets scared, it was never supposed to be scared. It was supposed to look over, and you'd see a crowd of people separate, and you'd see this old, Sean Connery in the heyday, bearded, sitting with two women on each arm and just basically giving him a nod of approval. That was the intention.
Okay.
We couldn't afford to do it. So then it was like, this might be better. We got Jesus. I had a conversation with him. He said, absolutely. Are you going to feed me? I said, yes. And he was fucking beautiful. But he's supposed, in my interpretation, he was Brad's spiritual relationship. No one sees him except for Brad. But whatever you gather from it is beautiful, because it is whatever you make of it.
Yeah.
As long as you looked at him and said, Jesus, mission accomplished.
Yeah, it was a clear. There was a clear bit of imagery there. It was pretty obviously Jesus, which is good. But they just at that last moment where he's next to Brad in the car, and Brad just laughs maniacally and says, "Why didn't you tell me when we were inside?"
Yeah,
and I nearly died.
Dude, so that's a perfect example of why you do test screenings, and why sometimes there's things in films that don't make any sense, but they're there and they work. That was never supposed to be that was an outtake. Literally, I'll never forget. That was an outtake, because I'm supposed to look, and he was supposed to be sitting. He actually wasn't. There was a whole different thing. In the outtakes where he's doing the chicken and playing the kazoo and Jesus. And anyway, when that was derived from what the intention was supposed to be. All it was Brad was like this, and he's like, holy shit. And he looks ahead, and Jesus is in the distance laughing at him like this. And It wasn't that funny. But the other shit he was doing was funny for outtakes. So when we put Jesus in the car, it wasn't supposed to be that. But when I saw his face, when I turned and looked at him, and he was this close to me, and he looked so goofy, I lost my shit. He lost his shit. And then I just kept rolling. I'm like, why the fuck didn't you tell me inside? And it was funnier than what we had planned. So we kept it.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's what things I find about that.
The hypocrisy of religion, and just going back to the risk of it. I mean, there's a lot of risks taken, especially in the PC climate we're in, which is a different conversation that's to be had. But the hypocrisy is that most people who are God-fearing Christians, who are, you name it, they're all hypocrites to a large degree, especially because, for example, the pornography industry, nobody watches porn, but this industry makes $4 billion a year. A lot of Christians finance porn. So, like, to have elements in this film and that they have something blasphemous in the film, like depicting a would-be Jesus, well, everyone has their hypocrisy, and everybody blasphemes on one level or another.
Yeah.
So there's my piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. Also, just a quick note on the, I would say cameos by pretty well-known faces. The one I'm going to talk about, one that stuck out to me, because as soon as I looked at the guy, I went, "That's Victor Rosta from Red Heat."
Yes.
I just it was in his eyes, straight away in his eyes. I was like, "That's fucking." And it was Edo Ross. And I was like, "That's Victor Rosta. That's awesome." Then Costas Mandalore, he popped up as the gym guy, and then obviously you've got Eric Roberts.
Eric Roberts.
That was a fucking amazing character for him. He's basically a pimp. And he just came across as a pimp.
Oh my God, this is so much fun. I'm so sick of telling these stories for years around bars and like within circles. Like I smoke a lot of cigars these days. That's how I deal with life. And literally the times I've told these, I'm so happy to tell this to you guys, because I feel like this is a real captive audience that really genuinely gives a shit. So just to speak on how all those guys got involved, we had a huge decision to make, which time will tell in terms of the success or failure ultimately of this film, commercially speaking. In terms of artistically, I feel like it's a success because you guys got to see it, and a lot of people have gotten to see it via commerce in the United States, because it has not been distributed in the foreign market. But the fact that we got it done is a success. The decision that had to be made was, do you make this film with stars so that it's marketable, because that's the commercial model, or do you live within the means that you have, hire the best actors to do the best job on the film, and take our chances that way? We opted for the latter. I made that decision. If I really wanted this film to pop off, and maybe we would have never met, because we would have had a massive enough success that I would have never met G, and circumstances wouldn't have come about that we'd be having this conversation now, I would have had Vince Vaughn play Brad, and I would have had Jon Favreau play Kevin. And you would have had names, and God knows if I would have gotten half a writing credit, but I would have had some money that would have come out of it and whatever. But I didn't do that. And we decided to make the film. And I stand by the performances. Now, within that, how do we get some names in there to hopefully make marketable? I knew they weren't going to be in the film long enough to be marketable, but I knew Costas Mandalore. I met Edo Ross through a mutual friend, and they're great actors. But even more so, the Eric Roberts thing, which I want to get to, getting Eric Roberts in your film is not a tall task, because he's always working. The guy, his agent made it clear, and I say this with complete respect and reverence for the actor, because I deem him as has his place in acting lore. He's a great actor, but he's a part of some movies that we can agree are timeless, even ridiculous ones, but he's best of the best. He's, he comes in The Dark Knight later on in his career.
Yeah, that's right.
So many great films he's been in, and they're still watchable. He's accessible because his agent said, look, we don't care about the possibility, how perfect the role is. Eric wants to work. It's about the money right now. That doesn't mean he doesn't do a good job, but he just wants to work.
Yeah.
So long story short, by some miracle with a few favors, we got him to come and do the job. But the funny thing is, Eric Roberts is based on a real life friend of mine. This real life friend, his name is Rod, just like he is in the film. Rod is one of the original Chippendales from the 1980s into the 90s.
Awesome.
Rod is the biggest pussy whore you'll ever meet. Viewer discretion advised. Sorry, I don't know what the limitations are. It's a podcast, so if I have to be
Trust me, no PC watches us. They left a long time ago.
So Rod, the joke around Rod within our group of friends back home is that Rod has been so spoiled by women, that he's doomed basically for the rest of his life to be single. He's the ultimate contrarian. If the three of us agree that woman across the way is the hottest woman we've ever seen in our lives, and there's no debating it, Rod gets wind of it. Because he didn't say it, Rod would find some flaw and dismiss it completely. That's who Rod is. So his famous line that he said one day, we were at a strip club, and everybody's gawking. It's in Canada, so it's full nude. This woman is a gorgeous French-Canadian woman dancing. And my buddy made an observation, and Rod's looking up at her, and he goes, "Yeah, I don't like the way her pussy's set up." And that was why the character, that's why the strip club scene exists. And whether it hits or not, Best Thanksgiving's like an Austin Powers film.
Yeah.
The first time you watch it, you don't get it. You may not like it. You may not respond. Every subsequent viewing, you're going to love it more and more because you get more and more and you pick up on subtleties.
Yeah.
So even Aquavelva, his name was Aquavelva because there's a guy at the gym who was a complete asshole who stunk and left weights everywhere. And my trainer, when I played American football 100 years ago, he used to refer to the guy as Aquavelva. He was this Eastern European fucking bulk of shit. And he always had, strong cologne and and it was just the worst combination of musk and cologne and shit. And so this is where the name Aquavelva came from. And then Edo Ross was a dream come true because I'm personally a huge fan of his. And he's a working man's actor. He's a great actor, been in a lot of great films, but people recognize him, may not know his name.
Yeah. Yeah, it was actually I was one of those people. I had to IMDb his name. I knew it was Victor Rosta right away. He was also in Universal Soldier as well. He was the guy got shot in the eye. I love that movie, man.
It's a good movie. Really good. It's a shame the sequels didn't kind of. But
have you guys seen Jean-Claude Van Johnson?
Yeah, I've seen the first 3 episodes, I think.
Dude, I don't watch anything. I watch The Mandalorian right now. That's it, because Star Wars. I don't watch anything. Jean-Claude Van Johnson, one day I'm at the cigar shop and I put it on and I go down the rabbit hole. It's so fucking good. Your guy ages so well because he makes fun of himself and it's hilarious.
Is this actually Van Damme that's in it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've not seen this.
It's on Prime.
Jean-Claude Van Damme is an actor, but Jean-Claude Van Johnson is his real alias that he does he does espionage and it's black ops he does on the side. He makes movies as his cover.
Such ridiculous.
That's bloody awesome. I wonder if we actually filmed Jean-Claude Van Damme last year here in Scotland. Actually, he came over for a convention, and he's
best guy ever.
Have you spent a lot of time with him?
Not 1 second. I just want what I see. Why, is he an asshole?
We've heard.
No, I'm asking, is he an asshole?
Well, we never got that close to kind of chat with him, but do you know the Power Ranger, Jason David Frank, the White Ranger?
I think I've heard of him, yeah. Is this the one that went to prison, or?
No. He's
the nicest guy on earth.
He's absolutely so nice. Well, he was there.
I think I've heard of him, yeah.
He was there with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and we actually got to chat to him, and he was saying, I love being here today, and I was so looking forward to meeting my childhood hero, and then I found out he was an absolute prick. I was like, well.
What year was this?
This was last year.
Oh.
I know. I was like, oh. And he was surrounded by 40 bodyguards with tattoos on their face. No one was getting near him. But hey, each experience to their own. You know what I mean?
From afar, he's a lot of fun. His Instagram is outrageous. Just listening to him talk or whenever he dances.
Oh, he done that live, eh? That's right. Did you see the Coors Light advert they done? Did you get Coors Light over in the USA?
Yeah, I think we invented it.
Sorry. Well, he does the advert for that with a mullet, and I thought that was class.
That's incredible, man.
It's the mullet, the double denim, and the black shoes. It's the best fucking look.
It's so good.
Good. So I read in the Q&A that you had sent over that you were told when you moved over to Hollywood that the best way for you to kind of get work is by creating it. So at this point, was it quite daunting for you to kind of learn to start writing, or has this always been a passion of yours? What was it like to kind of take the reins rather than just being an actor looking for work, just to create your own project?
Great question. What I found is that people are resistant to change. Humans are resistant to change. Even when you make a move like leave your hometown to the comforts of your surroundings to go do something, extraordinary with your life, win, lose, or draw, and success is obviously inherent within the individual. Whether how do you define success or failure? Mm-hmm. Some people are motivated by achievement, and some people are motivated by money or inspired. Yeah. I suppose there's maybe I always say I'm inspired by to attain money through achievement. I don't know if that makes probably makes sense somehow.
Absolutely.
This is Brad pulling his best words out of his ass in a jiffy.
I can relate.
But, a lot of people were like, wow, you go home to visit your family. I'm going for Christmas in a few days. I'm going to go back to Detroit for my quarantine Christmas with my family. But people always used to tell me for years, the balls. Oh, wow, that really took balls to move to New York and move to LA afterwards. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. But moving somewhere is very simple. You just fucking get an apartment and move in. It's what you do beyond that. Yeah. And I got complacent after being very inspired and complacent within the monotony of like, okay, I'm doing the cliche. I'm working in a restaurant and, and so that I'll be available during the day, which is the biggest for all the auditions I wasn't having. That's the biggest crock of shit sold to every aspiring artist. That's an excuse to just basically sleep in all day and then party all night, is that you have to have a night job. Well, I could have had a more lucrative day job and probably still done what I've been able to do. That said, that wasn't the case. But I met a girl in 2009 who was the first. It was a relationship when I first truly was able to say that I loved someone, like to the extent that I could see myself spending the rest of my life with them. That got me to make the move to New York, because at that point it was like a recognition of something in my life that was more important than just, my satisfaction or getting laid all the time. It was like, oh my God, this is something different. It has nothing to do with the waist below. It has to do with this part, And so that's what got me to New York, but that didn't end very well. But it kept me on the path and focus. 2009 comes around. I'm healed. I'm doing fine. I'm dating, whatever. And I was just working in the Tyler Perry film. I had met Tyler Perry. He hired me to come work on I Can Do Bad All By Myself, which was a great experience to really get the big, flying first class and go, to location, stay at a hotel and go to set and live it, and it was a wonderful first big experience. Yeah. And then shortly after that, I met a girl that was the second incarnation of, okay, this is more than just getting laid. This is someone amazing and special. And I realized, I looked back on the years that I had left Michigan. It had been 3-4 years at the time. And I said, have I done the most with my opportunities? And the answer was, yes and no, mostly no, because you make your own when it's a creative endeavor. Something like, you want to be an artist, not a lawyer, not a doctor, not open, run a gas station or open some business, as it were. You make up your own rules to get there. Mm-hmm. People can give you advice, but nobody really has the answer. How did Brad Pitt get there? How did Jon Favreau get there? How did, and I'm pulling random people, but they're all unique in their own trajectory and experiences. Mm-hmm. So by a chance meeting, there was recognition that I needed to do more. But then I told you, as you probably read, I met Marlon Wayans. Mm-hmm. And I said, I was working at a very popular restaurant at the time in LA. I was the maitre d', which I had a lot of fun with. A lot of comedy came out of that. And so I spoke with him and I said, what advice would you have for an aspiring actor like me? And he basically broke it down. He said, if you don't write, you got no chance. He's like, you have to create for yourself. You have to create for yourself. And he said, don't even write dialogue, which ultimately ended up being my strong suit. He's like, write, just learn the story structure. The guy took a piece of paper. He's having a drink in a night, like a bar, proper, like kind of not discotheque, you know, but he had like a lounge next door to the restaurant. Gave him a piece of paper. He wrote down 5 books and gave me his email address. And he's like, you know, just get cracking. And so I literally got on whatever. I went to a bookstore because those existed back then, and I bought a bunch of books and I started reading and writing, and that's how I got on the path. So a lot hasn't changed since I started doing this, yet a lot has, because I'm talking to you guys about a film that was made. So I hope I answered your question, but it's just
absolutely
it was planted that you have to do more, and that became apparent as I've gone, you know.
That was really nice of Marlon Wayans to do that. I mean, I find a lot of the time you hear that big names kind of shrug off anybody. There's like I mean, we've not really experienced it, but you do hear that for someone like Marlon to have someone asking for advice, I imagine he would get that question quite often. And he could almost as much as you would get asked for an autograph, maybe, especially out there in the States, maybe. But you would imagine that, you know, for him to take that time, I mean, that kind of shows what kind of dude that he is, to kind of just give you, I mean, to even go as much as give you your email address as well.
Yeah. Well, you know, and I won't go too far down this path, although, you know, I'm very long-winded. I have the ability to give you very comprehensive, long-winded answers. You know, what you have in Hollywood, and I'm very, listen, the pandemic, if we can agree that the pandemic was inevitable and that it happened, and we're not going to get into destiny or shoulda, woulda, coulda. We live in this pandemic age. I don't know what it's like where you are, but where I am, there's a mass exodus going on of people leaving LA for various reasons. I'm sure you guys are up on news and things like that. I get my news from Pornhub, but these guys, you know, there's a lot of saturation of young, stupid people in Los Angeles. And this is what sort of clouds the entertainment industry. What you have with that is most people who would approach a Marlon Wayans, and the next person approaches them a lot differently, especially depending female, male, whatever the case. And a lot of them, you know, there's a mentality in Los Angeles that they say only about a small percentage of people are actually successfully execute having an entertainment career. They're able to have one. Why? First of all, there's too many people here because everybody wants to be famous in this populous society we live in now. Very few people are artists. The ones that, and there are ones that break through either way, but you see the end result. Reality TV is the draw right now because everybody has an obsession with other people's demise and disaster. That's all it is. It's disgusting. With that said, most people that would approach a Marlon Wayans are probably having a different conversation than what advice would you have? It's what can you do for me? Yeah. That's what most people say. You know, and I've been very calculated about approaching people that I've met that are high profile in this town about how to have those conversations because it's that quick to alienate people to basically, and there's a reason a lot of them are assholes or give the perception that they're assholes. It's because imagine the privacy that you have and the anonymity that you have and that you can go and do your thing all the time anywhere. Imagine getting hounded over and over again by the same questions over and over again. That's why the smart ones who become massively successful move to fucking Utah or someplace like that. You know, in my case, it'll be Detroit. When I have enough means to have options, I'll go back to Detroit because I love where I'm from. I wouldn't recommend anyone to go there if they didn't have a reason, but I love it there. You know what I mean? It's like, it's my life. You know, with that said, that's a lot of the reason you have a lot of, listen, I met 2 celebrities whose names I will not mention that one reached the precipice of assholedom and one crossed it. And the one that crossed it was the Lindsay Lohan. But I've seen the worst in people in those 2. The other one I can't say because it might come back to bite me later on. But for the most part, every celebrity that I've met, dare I say, I have met Donald Trump. Not on like a real deep level, but I was working at a restaurant. He came in, I had an interaction with him as the maitre d'. I spoke with him briefly. Couldn't have been nicer. And also the whole staff's experience could have been nicer. And this is 2009, 10, something like that. So a lot of times you have to separate the personality from the merits. I mean, but that said, I'm not particularly a fan of his, but I'll never say anything bad about the guy on a personal level because my experience wasn't that with him.
Yeah.
So,
if only everyone thought that way, eh?
Well, yeah. We're asking a lot of the world.
I know, right?
It was just a little thing I wanted to say. You mentioned Marlon Wayans. I'm going to mention another Marlon. Now, when I was watching that movie, and when I looked at you, you looked like a young Marlon Brando. I was looking at your face, going, "He fucking looks like someone." And it was, I was about 20 minutes into the movie, and I went, "It's Brando." You've got a slightly different.
I've had that before.
You've had that before.
Yeah, people have told me that before, but the one I get the most, which obviously not these days, there's an actor named Jesse Bradford. If you Google him, you'll see his face. He was in Flags of Our Fathers and all those like teen films from the early 2000s.
Jesse Bradford.
I recognize
Bradford.
the name, but not the face. Hang on, Jesse.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, he's in a film called Swim Fan. That was a popular one he did, which... Anyway, people always used to tell me I look like Jesse Bradford. Then I met Jesse Bradford one day, and I'm looking down at him. He's like up to my chest. He's a nice enough guy, but I was like, people always tell me I look like you. Maybe we should do some work together.
That old chestnut.
If we were doing porn, I'd be the body, he'd be the head.
Oh my God. So from getting your movie from paper to the screen, for you, was that a new process? I mean, this is your biggest achievement so far, as to I mean, and I think this is one of the things we always love talking to people that have created. If you look back on everything that we've done previously, we're always, a lot of the time, we are talking to people that have written and directed, because it's very, as ourselves, we've done stuff previous, just small little things, and it's how you feel after you come up with an idea and you go through that process of executing it, and then you can sit it like a trophy on a shelf, stand back and admire it. That feeling to me is that, as you were saying earlier, what motivates people. That's what it is for me. Is when I look at what I'll do in the next 20 years, I don't want to look back and count the money that I've made. I want to look back and see the body of work that I'll leave behind, and that I can admire myself. So for yourself doing that with this movie, and to get that from the pages to the screen, was that like, how did you feel? Was it gratifying once you finally sat back?
I have a tendency. It's just the way that I've always been. Through different stages of development as an athlete. Like, I've always tried to do things to the best of my ability and to be right the first time. And everyone, there's a saying that, making your first film, you're going to fail, and you're going to fail miserably, and it'll probably never get seen by anyone, et cetera, et cetera. That's a half truth in this instance. And it's certainly a truth dependent on the audience, because as I wrote in that sort of Q&A, there's two types of people. There's movie goers and there's movie makers, and you get two completely different realities from the two. Now, to answer your question more directly, from the standpoint of the actual experience and the appreciation that I have for what it actually takes to make a movie. So you write the script and figuring out the story structure, which I'm the first to admit, best Thanksgiving ever, not the great American screenplay, but it's its own artistic interpretation, if you can call squirting and shit jokes art. So they can in some circles.
They are.
Yeah. The ultimate point being is that, when I got to meet the law firm that would represent the film for production council, they're the ones that do all the contracts. They're the ones that approve everything and tell you the A to Z of what legally must be done. you find out how many moving parts there are that you would have never imagined about what it takes to make a movie. I'm talking making a movie properly. I'm not saying you can make a proper movie on an iPhone and sell it for a lot of money. But the point is to do it, with SAG actors and unions are involved and things like that. There's so many potholes. There's insurances on things you wouldn't. They do something called not script coverage. There's some process that they do. Someone reads the script and breaks down every single name and place and event and idea to the extent it's called a research report. You get a report later on. There is a St. Jude's Falcons High School in something, Illinois, that has a population of X amount. There is a Samantha and a Sam Robertson. There's 50 of them in the Detroit metro area that live in this particular demographic. Like to cover your ass in case you say someone's name or use someone's alias or use a location and they come back and sue you later.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. This is hilarious. The name, Brad, no last name. Kevin, no last name. But Sam Robertson, last name. Like all these. So the point being, you learn this appreciation, and the best way I can describe it, from going through that pre-production and then production itself, to be a brain surgeon, right? It's complicated. You have to go to school for no less than 10 to 20 years, as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. But they learn that trade, and then they understand the dynamics of what brain surgery is. So they go and they execute that. Making a fucking movie is brain surgery. There's so many moving parts. It's so complicated. And not even talking about production, it's pre-production, but then you do the production. So my point, bringing this to a head, is that, I learned a hell of a lot, and it was an incredibly gratifying experience to live through that. And it was a very positive experience. And I think for all the flaws or faults and criticisms that the film has had from a commercial viability standpoint, what I stand by is we made a professional looking, professional sounding, well-acted, well-executed comedy for what it's supposed to be. And I think the long game is going to be where the success of Best Thanksgiving is, because if it has that cult effect and it becomes a known commodity over time, I think that's where it's going to do well. And ultimately, that's where I feel commercially it'll be deemed as a success.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Like flicking through my my queue on Netflix, that's something that I would definitely be like, right, I'm intrigued, and I would watch it. And as obviously we're British, it's received really well by us. I mean, by us too. Do you know what I mean? I think I would recommend this to my friends. So if Jordan already was going to watch that, I would have said, you need to check it out. And that's kind of in some ways how movies, I mean, this is where the cult following kind of comes from, isn't it? From when sometimes you can release a movie or an album and then 10 years pass without any kind of glimmer, and then just kind of wildfire. I mean, is there any plans for it to be released on the UK side of Amazon Prime or something like Netflix?
So great question, and it's funny. I was going to say if this podcast gets enough traction, maybe I'll get a phone call from one of the distribution companies in the UK, and we can actually get a distribution deal there. Because here's the thing. American comedies have a reputation of not translating well in the foreign market. And one thing that I've really learned in the last several years from trying to get a distribution deal and ultimately getting the one that we got was that they play Moneyball or analytics with everything. They do it with American sports now. I think they do it with European. They do it with all sports now. And everything is so calculated. And one of the very calculated aspects of the entertainment industry is foreign distribution. That's where the money is made. If they make an abomination like, The Last Jedi, can't believe I'm saying it, but a Star Wars film that's an abomination.
That's the one I liked.
Mate, I'm totally on with you. I'm on that way.
I know you did. So when they make an abomination like that, even though it may not resonate well or do what it's expected to do in the North American market, they know they're going to make their money in the foreign market, because Star Wars, for example, is a brand that if you were to print Star Wars, just the name, on toilet paper, you would corner the market in toilet paper. It literally sells anything and everywhere. Now, with a film like Best Thanksgiving, the big argument was with some of the foreign distribution companies were, well, you're never going to sell this in the foreign market. You got to change the name because nobody knows what Thanksgiving is. And I'm like, you motherfuckers. Yeah. People are not nearly as stupid as you think that they are. They may not understand Thanksgiving, but they know it exists. Don't you think that if you maybe gave a shot to put something like this at little cost into that, certain foreign markets, just the title alone would pique some interest and be like, oh, an American film, Thanksgiving. Now, I won't lie to you. There's certain subtitles that I would have a hard time seeing getting translated with some of the dialogue. Like when Brad says after the squirt happens and Kevin and Brad are in the little mud room, like before Brad goes and tells his wife I'm going out, he's like, I know it's kind of, I know it's somewhat degrading when someone comes in your face, but society's changed. Straight guys got to take it on the chin once in a while too. How do you fucking translate that into Lithuanian or fucking Croatian?
See, Brad's wife actually, she probably would be the only character that I couldn't kind of like. I've never seen anybody's wife be like, yeah, that's fine on Thanksgiving or any kind of special event or any event. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. On you go. Have a good night out. Hell no. Hell no. She'd have been like, nah, right. Do you know what I mean?
I think she would do what most women do in that situation. They'll say no, and they'll say no again, and then they'll say, do what you like.
Oh, the worst. The worst. Because then it's on you. Then it's on you.
Well, it's funny if and we'll talk. I'm sure we'll get to this, but if Best Christmas Ever ends up being a thing,
man, that'd be good.
There's a lot of opportunities there to pay off the skeptics and the people who had observations like that of like, does it start out? Is Brad currently in therapy because he's going through a divorce? Is that where we pick up? And I see an amazing amount of comedy potential there, but also a more conventional storyline, doing some of the things that we didn't do, that some of the filmmakers criticized here in Hollywood with my contemporaries. But, there's a lot of potential there to do those things. But yeah, but the thing is that there is, but that's the other thing is like, that was a criticism, is Liz is so good and she's so positive and she does such a great job and she's adorable and likable. And it's like, it makes Brad look like 10 times the asshole.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't change the fact that I have friends who have wives who are that cool.
What?
Who are assholes that bad. Not in front of their wives, but the things that they do outside the home that they have. Like me, listen, I wrote this shit. It's not my personality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've never been married. I haven't been engaged. But I mean, like, it wouldn't be my personality to go down and go that route. Then again, I haven't been there. But that said, it comes from somewhere. It's from observation. And also, the shit's just funny.
See, that's something that we kind of always talk about on the shows, Jordan and I, is things sometimes should just be an experience, especially things like movies and TV shows. You should just sometimes, rather than trying to dissect it, just enjoy the experience of it being funny. Like that opening, the very opening title where it says, this is based on
a bunch of shit.
Yeah. Like that straight away for me, I was like, because there are various types of people, and Jordan and I, this is why we get on so well, this is why we have a show together, is straight away within like the first 10 minutes of meeting someone whether or not you can banter on a different level with them. And when I seen that come up at the start of the movie, I went, this is my kind of movie. Right? Straight away, because it's
you guys have chemistry, and it tapped into your chemistry. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
Now you have my attention.
Yeah, like fart jokes.
You had my attention. Now you have my interest.
Absolutely. Stuff like fart jokes. Like our wives are like this. Why do you even find that funny? Right? But farts are funny. If they were not supposed to be funny, it wouldn't sound like that, right?
Yeah.
It wouldn't sound like that.
We had an incident on the podcast with a fart. It was the most ill-timed, kind of overly loud fart.
Something
like
you'd probably write
bastard, like a fat bastard fart. When you're an overweight child in a society that demands perfection.
It was actually
we were talking to a guy called John Edwards. Now John Edwards is the owner of the Stardust Ranch in Arizona, and it's supposed it's supposed to be like this serious kind of UFO and close encounter hotbed, right? Now this guy, his story is fucking bananas. It sounds crazy, but he sounds so plausible, and that's what kind of makes his story interesting. Like, he's talking about killing aliens with samurai swords and stuff. It's fucking nuts. But it was such a good podcast. It was a great interview. But he was talking about
the death of his friend and his friend's wife. Right? Yeah. This is a very serious moment, right? So we're like we are right now. There's 4 of us, because there's us 2, there's John, and then there's the guy that wrote his book as a publicist, right? And we're like this. We're engaged, and we're talking about, so because we read somewhere that your friend and his wife got killed. Now they actually did die, right? And as he's telling this traumatic story, Jordan goes like this. The best part is, right, they totally no sell it, right? So they're like still talking like they've not heard it, and Jordan and I are like this, trying to like destroy this podcast. And this is like something that you would write. I imagine that would be something that would find its way into your movie, right? And that's why,
dude, I got a story of something that happened at a funeral that probably one-ups that.
Oh, let's go. Let's hear it.
So, and we maybe talked about this a little bit you maybe read it in the interview I did, but or the Q&A, but my original comedic grounding is Young Frankenstein. Anything with Peter Sellers, Pink Panther, The Party from 1976. I was so dark as a child, so I'm of Middle Eastern heritage, if you haven't figured that part out with the mullah beard. My mom and dad were born and raised in Iraq, and by some alchemy, we're Roman Catholic but Iraqi. So technically, we're not Arabs, yet I speak Arabic. Long story short, I grew up on these films, and when I was a child, I would get really dark in the summertime, to the extent that I used to watch this Peter Sellers film called The Party, and he did the Indian accent. I thought Peter Sellers was Indian until I was about 18 years old. I shit you not. And then I realized, wait, he's English? Pink Panther guy? Like, I didn't associate it. I just, like, The Party was its own movie. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you have to know what I'm talking about. Find it and watch it.
Yeah. Okay.
But he's blackface, which is not okay now. But he plays an Indian, and he's funny. And that's where I grew up doing an Indian accent. But the point being, Young Frankenstein was one of my favorite. It's a Mel Brooks film. I'm sure you guys have to know that one.
Yeah, we know that one.
Do you remember the scene in the movie where they exhume the corpse, Peter Boyle's corpse, and then the constable finds Igor and Dr. Frankenstein taking the corpse to the lab, and the carriage breaks and this hand is just sticking out of the box.
Yeah.
And then Gene Wilder puts his arm around the hand so it looks like it's his own hand. So when the constable comes up, he's just trying to like normalize and just and pretend like it's his hand. We're at church. My uncle died. So we're at his funeral. And I already had, like, this was an uncle that I was at odds with. Loved him very much. I come from a family where, for the most part, if we disagree with each other, we love each other very much still. We're not like, fuck you, don't ever talk to me again, although there is some of that. But this uncle, we had we disagreed about a lot of things, but I respected the man. I loved him. We go to his funeral. So it's a known commodity. Me and my brother didn't quite get along with this guy. We're sitting there. I'm here. My brother's sitting here, and this other Iraqi woman who couldn't have been 28 years old, but she looked like she was fucking 48 years old, was sitting next to my brother. We're watching the priest, a Middle Eastern ceremony, very somber, very serious, not like a American Christian church. It's like it's all in Aramaic, actually, this mass. And he's like, the guy looks like he would behead you if you did something stupid, the priest. So my brother is sitting in the middle, and he keeps looking at the girls the girl, and then he looks over and he looks at me, whatever. And I'm observing what's going on. And for some reason, the girl is sitting there doing this with her hands. She's looking at her hands. So my brother looks at this going on, and then he looks over at me, and I put my hand up and I start going like this. He doesn't just lose it. He fucking explodes in a quiet church of no less than 600 people. And he loses his shit. Goes down, I grab his fucking jacket, I put him down like this, and then I lose my shit. But I plug my nose because I figure if I can't breathe, I can't make noise laughing. My eyeballs are out to fucking here, and I'm shaking like this, and I'm putting on this stupid face like I'm trying to look like I'm mourning or crying, and I'm like, I'm fucking, so I'm doing this with my thumb. I'm almost ripped my thumb out of its socket. 20 minutes! 10 minutes, 10 minutes go by, and I'm dying. And my sister pinches my side from the pew back there, and I'm like trying to make it look like we're not dying laughing because this looks like these two cocksuckers are disrespecting this solemn moment, the most solemn moment. So finally, they get up to give us the fucking bread. I get up. I'm walking down the aisle. I see the casket. I'm trying to hold it together. I'm doing this, just ripping my thumb out of the joint. I figure if I touch the casket, it'll sober me up and make it serious. I touched the casket, I lost my shit. I started laughing even harder. I get up, the priest gives me the bread. I ran straight towards the confessional. I didn't come out till the end. God damn, were we on stage?
Oh man, I know what it's like to be in that kind of scenario where you're in a place where you shouldn't be laughing, and it's just so hard. It makes it worse when you're looking at someone's eyes who is there with you and they're laughing and trying not to laugh. And that moment where you just explode, man. Oh, I've been there a few times. Like, I'm that guy that laughs ridiculously loud and goofy, and any kind of that's Jordan and I actually worked together, and you could hear me across the building whenever I found something funny.
But you know what? That's the funny thing. If you have that chemistry with the right people, you know, that's some of the best laughs I've ever had in my life were at the worst possible time. I mean, I had a friend through difference in school, different times. You know, I remember a time I was in detention. I went to a military school from 6th to 8th grade to make up for everything my brother did before me. So I ended up, I was in detention, and I tried not to, but I made eye contact with one of my classmates. Just making eye contact, over. Holding my fucking nose, head red as a fucking tomato. It was over. And it's the best feeling in the world.
I'll need to send you that clip of us in that interview. I'll email it to you, and you can see if you watch our
send
face.
me the whole podcast. I'd love to see it, but the clip at least. I have to send you several clips as well.
God. There's I think laughter is medicine for the soul. Truly it is.
No doubt about it. Are you kidding me?
And I think the funnier, you know, the funnier we get as a society, we should be able to kind of take the shitty parts of life and make it funny, because that's
we're just not allowed to do that anymore. That's one of the biggest problems with trying to exist.
Is it like that where you live?
Oh yes.
Yeah, we tend to. What happens is whatever America does, good and bad, we will do it quite shortly after. And it's a shit show, man. You can't.
Well, let's be evolved for a second. Let's all be evolved here. The merits are well and good. The merits and the intentions of political correctness are well and good. I think a lot of positive comes out of people trying to be better to each other.
Mm-hmm.
However, when it crosses the bounds and affects things like art, you know, they say art mimics society. Well, society mimics art too in certain regards.
Mm-hmm.
When you cross the bounds and then you start making art into this, you're censoring it, which censorship is the number one thing that goes against the American way. And ends up being the Scottish way, apparently, by proxy. But that's where it goes too far. I think that, listen, I think that racism is deplorable, but I think when you look at a film like Blazing Saddles, which is impossible to make in this day and age, and in fact, I think as a minor miracle, it hasn't gotten canceled yet, although I own 7 fucking copies of it, so it'll never be canceled. These things are timeless because, again, it goes back to that quote that I said earlier, it celebrates the absurdity of the human condition. That's what comedy does. You know, how many times do they say the N-word in Blazing Saddles? Guess who wrote Blazing Saddles? Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor fucking wrote Blazing Saddles. 90% of the world has no idea that that's the case. They think Mel Brooks wrote it or Gene Wilder, but he wrote Blazing Saddles, although the studio wouldn't let him act in it. But that film is timeless because it makes fun of the ridiculous, extraneous lengths that racism went to at a time and place.
Yeah. It's almost like it's by trying to be too politically correct, they're almost whitewashing the issue. They're trying to pretend it doesn't exist. And it's all you need to do. Actually, one of the craziest things is when you look at all the new rules for being nominated for an Academy Award. The list of rules that they've got now about what you must do is fucking bananas. It's like you said, it's forcing people to do art a certain way, and the whole point in art is to do it the way the artist sees it, and it's just not right.
Also, when you said you were watching Aladdin, and it gave you a
hard on.
Yeah, sometimes. No, but there was a disclaimer at the start, wasn't it, telling you what did it say, J-Mac, again?
What's that?
The disclaimer at the start of Aladdin. Remember
was this the Disney Aladdin, or was this
the original? The original.
The original. Yeah, the 1992 one. It was. I was going to watch it on TV, so I'm flicking through the TV guide, and when you select a movie, you get the synopsis, the little overview of what the movie's about. For Aladdin, it just said this movie contains outdated attitudes, and it's like, what? What? Okay, what's the fucking film about?
Apparently, none of these people have watched the news in the last 30 years. There's no outdated attitudes. Arabs are still Arabs.
God.
And technically, they're Iranians.
Yeah, well,
the film. It was an Adam Sandler movie that came up with the same thing. It was Don't Mess with the Zohan.
Oh, that's a beautiful movie.
It's so fucking. It's such a stupid movie, but that had the same warning. This movie.
When I said beautiful, I meant stupid, but like in a good way. It's just. Zohan's beautiful from this standpoint. It caters to this niche audience. If you get it, you get it, and if you don't, that's fine too. But it has its moments. It's like I thoroughly enjoyed that because listen, I don't know if you know about my relationship with Borat, but I believed I was Borat before I ever saw the Ali G show. And I'm not even talking about what you guys saw before I ever saw it. Right. When I saw in 2004, my cousin, I was out of college. I was doing commercial real estate. I wasn't acting yet, or I wasn't going down that road yet. My cousin's, I walk into his home and in a suburb of Detroit, and he puts on this show. He's like, this guy's great. He's from the UK, or he's whatever. I said, okay, great. We're watching it. Ali G was funny, fine. Bruno was on. But then Borat came on, and I heard that. And I saw it was the first season. I saw the dating episode, and what he looked like, what he was doing, I probably had a generational laugh from that episode. Like, I laughed so fucking hard, my stomach got a workout. And like, shit like that, that's not for everybody, but if you get it, you get it. And that's kind of like, there was some aspects of Zohan that were very like Israeli geared, with the accent and the innuendos, but I get your point.
Yeah.
But the fucking disclaimer, come on.
Yeah.
A cool little bit of trivia here is his wife, Sacha Baron Cohen's wife, is actually from the same town that I'm sitting in right now.
Is her name Isla Fisher? Isla?
Isla? Is it Isla, isn't it?
It's Isla, yeah.
Isla, yeah. So yeah, she's from Bathgate and then moved to Australia.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know that. I thought, I guess I would have known Australian more than anything. As far as I'm concerned, she was American. So she was in Wedding Crashers. Her big, like, sort of like on the screen, on the scene was Wedding Crashers when people knew her as like a known commodity after.
Yeah, she was the Klinger.
Yeah, she was the Klinger. She's fucking. She's gorgeous, man. She
is gorgeous, and it just goes to show you that funny wins over over all else.
One of the really standout parts as well about Best Thanksgiving Ever was G-Tom Max. Like, has such a diverse sound, and you know what? And I remember even texting G at the same time, going, "Holy shit! There's like a song for every part of this movie that just fits." Like, from seeing Sam in the bar and Is That You plays, I was like, yes. Even in the strip bar as well, there's a song of his playing, and it just suits the way that the woman's moving on the stage. So how did that kind of relationship form between you and G? Did you know him previously before kind of reaching out about the music?
So this is kind of a dream come true to get him involved, and it all started with Cry Little Sister. Okay? So here's the thing, is that going back years and years before we were ever going to make this film, one of the things was, okay, we have a character in Eric Roberts inspired by Rod that, he's going to be run the strip club, basically a pimp. But then there was this other element. So like in very, young adulthood years and getting through stages of maturity, you find out that there's a phase you go through with a strip club. And it was just this known thing that Cry Little Sister is just this massively famous song and popular song in strip clubs. Strippers love, or I'm so sorry, let me be politically correct. Dancers, of all exotic dancers, the fucking 60s, exotic dancers love to dance to Cry Little Sister. And like when you're faded and drunk, fucked up, and that song's playing and you've got this, who knows what she looks like in the daylight, but at the time looks like the most beautiful woman you've ever seen in your life. And that song's playing. It's a really magical experience for about 4 minutes and $20. So that song was like this. I had an agenda. I was like, okay, we're going to make this film. I want to make the film. I want Eric Roberts to play Rod, and I want to get Cry Little Sister in it. If I can achieve these three things, I've done my job and given it my best shot. So 2 years, a year earlier, I reach out to G's, I don't know how I found it, his website. I found an email address. I contacted it, and I talked to his assistant and told the assistant my intention. And so the assistant said, great, keep us posted when you get to post-production, and we'll arrange a screening. So after we filmed Best Thanksgiving, we went 15 months without funding for post-production. This is a part of the journey. It took 4 years to finish this film. Mm-hmm. Towards the time when we found that money and we got to editing the film 15 months later, we're now in 2015 after shooting it in November, December of 2013. So finally, I contact G's people again. We arranged for this screening at a really, really nice theater that in Santa Monica. It's called the Dick Clark Theater. It's this tiny 22-seat theater, but it's perfect. Nice projection screen, intimate, comfortable chairs. So G meets me there. I met him, didn't know anything about him. And I'm like, my asshole is puckered up because I'm like, how am I going to approach this to explain to this guy that the song that's probably for sure one of his most famous creations that has its in the Lost Boys is such a huge hit in the strip club community. So sure enough, he's very nice gentleman, sat him down in the theater, and I went in the projection room. And for an hour, at the time was only like 80 minutes of footage. We just hadn't gotten to prominence with the editing. I'm looking through a peephole, watching him the whole time, watching when he checks his phone, sends a message. I'm like basically telling the projectionist, like to pause or don't pause just to make sure he's paying attention. And then finally At some point, he gets up to leave, and I'm like, fuck! I run out after him. I say, pause the film. Everything okay? He's like, yeah, mate, I'm just going to the bathroom. And I'm like, oh. So long story short, he watched the film, sat down with him. He had a very disturbed look on his face, or not disturbed, but concerned look. And he's like, I get what you're doing here. You know, he goes, I get it. And I said, you know, look, I didn't know how to prepare or preface this, but I don't know if you know this, but your song's really popular in the strip club world. You know, like it's a thing. And he's like, oh, mate, I know all about it. He's like, you kidding me? I've been for decades now. He's been approached by, you know, dancers and porn stars and everything. And oh my God, we love this song so much. So I was like, that's why that used to be the song in the montage before Kevin vomits on the girl, and it was fucking fire. It's awesome. But ultimately, as business realities would have it, I couldn't afford to, and he gave me a great deal, but I couldn't afford to put the song in the film, so we'll live to fight another day. Maybe the director's cut of that film one day will be what we end up doing. But it was cool because G called me and he sat down with me a couple of days later. He said, look, I'll make you a deal. I can't guarantee you Cry Little Sister, but for little money and a piece of the pie from the proceeds of the film, shares in the film, I'll do the music. And I couldn't have been more happy with having him on board and bringing what he brought to the film. I mean, he created some, you know, listen, there were aspects of the music that I wasn't in love with, but then I ultimately deferred to him. And by the end of the thing, as a total work, he really strung it together nice and did a great job.
Yeah.
Like I was looking for more classical score to be the music throughout the film because I'm making a conventional studio style film, you know, beginning, middle, and an end, and some sort of a happy ending or our version of that or whatever. And, you know, I want melody. I don't want, you know, like a 1980s, you know, vocals on every, you know, on every track, you know, like a melody and she squirted across the room, you know, like shit like that.
She squirted
like in every 80s film you saw, right?
Yeah.
But we got some of that, but it works.
Yeah.
So thank God. And you know, and even the song that ends up in the montage that you that Jordan mentioned a moment ago, I think Jordan mentioned it. When the girl's dancing on the runway and it's his song called My Bad. That's the song that you guys saw in the film, not Cry Little Sister. It's an awesome song. I listen to it all the time, and it worked perfectly there.
Yeah, I did think that because obviously we've been studying G for the last year now, putting everything together, and that's something about G's music is it just you can listen to one song and then another song and completely be like, how is this the same guy? And I found that for Best Thanksgiving Ever, I could hear that it was G because I'm that used to his voice now, but I imagine if you put it to a poll, not everybody would know that he's doing pretty much all the music through it. I would imagine they would think it was different. I mean, there's at one point there's a woman singing, but I'm sure that's G's song as well.
One of his songs, yes, but he produced and wrote that song. Yeah. So, I forget the artist's name offhand, but it's a beautiful song. It's like he had a song in there that he wrote for Kiss.
Yeah, that's right. Is that you?
Is that you? And it's a fucking great, you know, it's such a nice accompaniment to Brad meeting Sam Robertson with the foreshadowing. Is that you?
Yeah, absolutely. Not like that as well. It's just the song. She's standing there all sexy, and the song just gives it oomph. You know what I mean? Just he kind of looks up and it's like, is that you? And he's just like, yeah. Holy shit! You know,
it's one of the songs that you kind of get the meaning of why that song was used after the fact. You know?
Yeah, totally. It just worked initially, but then after the fact, you're like, could this have been more perfect? You know?
Yeah.
And the thing with working with G, let me tell you, from the filmmaking standpoint, for me, I appreciate music. I do not consider myself a music person because I know a lot of friends, you might be amongst those kinds of people, that if a song comes on the radio, you start singing the lyrics, you know them. I don't know the fucking lyrics to my favorite songs ever. Like I listen to them, but I never retain the lyrics. Well, something about, you know, like, and in that regard, my whole thing with working with G was I said, hey, here's the creative license. Go and make music, do music, curate the film. I said, ultimately, I don't know what it is, but I know what it's not. And so that was like my creative input on how the music ultimately got done, was that there were certain things he put in and I was like, nah, it's not going to work. But then they'd hear other things. They'd be like, I like that. Let's do that and just go with it and move forward. And you know, he's a very, very talented individual, an artist first class in terms of curating music and getting the right ideas. And, you know, I was just fortunate enough to have an ally like that involved that could make quality music and bring quality to the table on a very lean budget.
Yeah. What was the budget for the movie, or like by the time it was finished?
So initially it was just under 400K. By the time it was done, that was how much was initially raised from private equity to shoot the film. But then we put all the money on the screen. So we didn't have any for post-production because there were some, I wouldn't say broken promises. I would be less, I'd be doing a disservice to myself if I referred to them as broken promises. There were some other possibilities brought in by other people in the operation that never came to fruition. And it happened, and I knew it was a possibility. So ultimately, we ended up going in purgatory, and then I had to raise an extra 55K and change to do the job of 125K projected. But ultimately, I took on an extra 50K in debt, so which I'm paying off till this day.
Well,
but
that just speaks volumes.
That's what it takes, man. That's why a lot of these things don't go to fruition. I mean, the life that I lived from 2014 until just January of this year was, you know, it was funny. You look at it back, and I'm like, how the fuck did I get through that? Because it was. I was a hermit. I went from having a social life and, you know, like dating and you know, going to restaurants and things, to literally going check to check, not sure if I was going to be able to pay my rent, wondering if I was going to have to fold up my operation and move back to Detroit with an unfinished film. But somehow I made it work, and I'm grateful to be. I wake up every day with a clean conscience and pretty happy. So I guess there's the victory there. But to answer your question, just under $500,000 and change, including debt.
Well, the quality of the look of the film that you got for that money is really, really fucking good. If everything from the lighting to sound, everything feels like easily a $2 or $3 million movie. That's what $500,000 in production looks like. And, you know, it's the difference between, like, you know, $5,000 or whatever. And listen, a lot of people make a lot of great films on much leaner budgets. But I just like going back to what I was saying earlier about my mentality of things. I knew, okay, it's my first film, but I surrounded myself with people who had more credibility and expertise in several different departments, even though I made some risky decisions, like, again, putting myself in the film. But with that said, the director of photography was fantastic. The AD or assistant directors and all these moving parts that, you know, like the production staff, you know, the actors and the casting director. I put all these people in together, and I felt good about the team we had. So we were able to execute a high level, high production quality, given the limitations of the commercial realities of the film, like who's in it or who's not in it. Yeah.
I mean, where we are in 2020 now, even since you started work on Best Thanksgiving Ever, the world has changed now, right? We've got stuff like crowdfunding, a lot of really successful stuff. For example, I don't know if you, being from one Star Wars guy to another, there's a series of Star Wars comics that were Darth Vader comics, which shows his time between Revenge of the Sith, right up to, I mean, and it goes from Revenge of the Sith further on
up until Rogue One.
A bit before then, right? But some guy in his house took the comics and narrated them and done the voiceover and stuff, and that's his full-time job. He's made so much money off that from just doing it in his house. In this kind of where we are now, in the world of anybody can do anything and it'll speak for itself now, and you can self-release. Would you ever plan to do something like that? Taking even maybe the characters from the Best Thanksgiving Ever to maybe doing a couple, maybe even if you've done like a wee 4-part miniseries with some of the characters to kind of try and steamroll that into, you know, just putting more behind the movie itself and kind of pushing it forward. And maybe getting something crowdfunded, because you could crowdfund the best Christmas ever, right? Or the best Halloween ever would be class if you done it like a horror, right?
Here's how my mind works, actually. We happen to pick this obscure Thanksgiving holiday that's, again, it's a holiday, but it's basically an excuse to be gluttonous and eat like a pig and drink and whatever. But I love ideas like best Halloween ever, best St. Patrick's Day ever. You guys, do you observe Lent during the Easter season?
I know it exists.
Catholics do, yeah.
It's Catholics do. You're not Catholics. Are you Protestants?
I'm nothing, man.
I was raised Protestant, but I'm very much an atheist now.
Sure. So as a I'm the kind of Catholic, so I'm Catholic by description, but they call me a CEO, which is Christmas, Easter only. So that okay. And weddings and funerals. I mean, look, my religious grounding has never prevented me from having a good time or doing anything in my life. So ultimately, Lent is a time of year. Growing up in Detroit, I remember as a kid as being one of the most miserable times of year because you've got gray skies, you've got snow that's kind of melting but gray and shitty from the streets and all the dirt from the road, and it's foggy and it's fucking miserable. And then you have this 40 days of basically fasting and like really somber, sad. Going to fucking church during Lent, going to church sucks on Christmas Eve. Going to church during Lent is even more miserable. I grew up with that. So my whole idea was you've got this miserable surrounding, but imagine Brad going through a divorce during Lent. Like the deep religious jokes that could be there, having a visit, you know, like the relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know. I think obscure holidays, although they're not conventional and probably aren't box office, so to speak, which would be my second mistake if I did that again. They appeal to me. I think best St. Patrick's Day ever sounds fucking hilarious because St. Patrick's Day is ridiculous. It's a caricature of what it's supposed to be. The shit that I've seen on St. Patrick's Day, some of it ended up in Best Thanksgiving. It's like, you know.
Yeah. I think that there's, I mean, you could even write short stories and publish them on the Kindle to kind of...
Oh, what a surprise. I didn't even answer your question. Yes, I see your point about crowdfunding and all those possibilities. Look, I went through creative burnout because the way my mind works, some people tell you on like these master classes and all this shit, you know, you just do it. You have to write. You got to bleed in front of the page, whatever. Listen, I went through such adversity getting Best Thanksgiving done. It took me about a year after the distribution deal was executed to just find myself again, to the point where I would even consider cracking a book and revisiting how to write a script again. And then the ideas of what this story is. I had a concrete something I was passionate about. I said, this squirt scene and the guest house scene is so fucking funny. We can make this. The hope was that this would have garnered enough success that it would have opened up other doors, like conversations that I wasn't privy to before, things like that. But it didn't because of the struggle that we went on. And then what you find out in Hollywood is people are only going to help you if there's an ulterior motive for them. If you're only as good as what you can do for them. That's why a lot of the shady shit that Hollywood has a reputation of happens. But my hope was to be able to get into a position where I could maybe propose a best Christmas ever and talk to a studio or talk to, you know, a production house and be like, let's put a team together. Put me with a writer. Let's hash this out and make a funny story that can loosely be based off of Best Thanksgiving. If Best Thanksgiving had been massively successful or successful enough that it was a known commodity, I could probably make a sequel to Best Thanksgiving, get it financed easily, and bring back most of the cast. But if that doesn't end up happening and it just ends up being, Best Christmas Ever is its own loose based thing, I probably won't be in it if it's done by Hollywood. So it's at some point to do something of this scale with the money that's involved. I have had my experiment. I have to regard the commercial viability of it in the next rendition. And my hope is that we can bring back most of the cast because they're so great,
Yeah.
So, but and crowdfunding to me also, listen, I'm very pessimistic about it. I think more concrete things to go forward with, to be able to say like, look, here's success. Put a promissory note against this, or say, back us financially based on the successes of this project. But crowdfunding to me is kind of like hitting the lottery on Instagram, getting 1 million followers. It's like, yes, it's available and everyone can do it, but the shit that you have to do it becomes a Ponzi scheme. And I've tried to go down that road with certain other things, and it's like I don't know. That's where my limitations are. I guess that's where I become lazy.
I don't know.
But yes, there's a lot of possibilities to go a lot of different ways with these characters.
I think it would all kind of start really if when was it that the Best Thanksgiving Ever was released on? It was recently that it became.
It was released November 2018.
Yeah, on Prime.
On Prime, it's on Prime, iTunes, Vudu, YouTube. You can watch it, but it's all. It has to be, I think, a North American IP address. So it's been released on several pay-per-view channels. Basically, anywhere you go to rent streaming video, you can watch it.
Have you spoken to Netflix?
But again, it's North America right now. We don't have a foreign distribution deal, so
I think it would do well in the UK. I think it would do. We're always looking for new things to watch. That's literally the biggest issue you get to when it gets to like evening time is sit down and you start flicking through the Netflix.
I've canceled Netflix no less than 3 or 4 times in the last several years. Because what I find that I do is I turn it on and all I do is cue things that I say would sound great to watch. Never fucking watch it. You know why I did start it up again a year ago is because I started doing stand-up last year, just kind of like just to be active. And when Dave Chappelle's Sticks and Stones came out, I immediately signed back up because I needed to see it. And I've watched that no less than 10 times. Like that's what an impression it made on me, because he is actually an advocate to what I think is the saving grace and potential of what censorship and political correctness and comedy may go back to its roots and get away unscathed. Because it has to.
0% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Exactly. And what was the fan rating on Rotten Tomatoes?
100.
Exactly.
So the critic score was 0 and the audience score was 100. That's fucking crazy,
ironically,
man.
you bringing that up, and we're talking last night. I have my iPad sitting next to me in bed. No, it wasn't porn.
Not at this point. Not at this point.
Yeah, exactly. We weren't there yet. My fascination with like interviews with people like George Lucas, right? And Chappelle and people like that. I was watching a George Lucas interview. It was kind of an annotated interview a guy made, and basically about why he doesn't operate in Hollywood and what the problem is with Hollywood, and basically what the problem is with like the Academy and the agenda of all these award shows. And you guys touched on it earlier, is that at some point you have to remember Hollywood is a business. The movie industry is a business. Why it's taken me this long to get to some degree of prominence or what I deem success, it doesn't bother me, because emotionally I have my feelings, but creatively from business standpoint, I understand the business reality of it. And that's why I've been so patient with the career to go where I hope it goes. But in terms of eventually, they alienated enough people. There are films that people don't give a shit about, don't want to see. I mean, and I go back to, you see what they did with Star Wars. They took this thing that was a beautiful story that resonated with probably over 1 billion people, if not billions in its history. And they turned it into a vessel for identity politics and political agendas and things like that, to the point where, great, if you want to take risks, and some people think Ryan Johnson is a genius because he was willing to take risks. Well, what I saw in that film was deliberately doing what the audience wouldn't expect you to do, just for the sake of doing it, to say, gotcha, you wouldn't expect that.
Yeah.
You didn't think Luke was going to throw the fucking lightsaber over his shoulder. You didn't think he was going to turn out to be the biggest pussy in the world. You didn't think Princess Leia would ultimately become a lesbian, because that's the biggest takeaway I got from that film that people don't get, but then they watch it again and they're like, oh yeah. And it's like, my whole thing is great. There's all kinds of films that profess that, but did you have to do it to one of the most successful stories of all time?
I know.
And that's what, I wouldn't have seen the last one if I wasn't dragged to the theater as a family tradition. I was not going to see it, and I wished I didn't.
I walked out. Remember, Kevin, we went to see it on the preview screening, midnight screening, and I left after an hour.
Force Awakens
Jordan, were you fucking with me when you said The Last Jedi was your favorite?
No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. Then he don't come back.
It's not.
He likes it.
I did. I liked it, but I think I liked it because I'd heard nothing but bad things about it, so I was expecting.
Hang on, let me
it
get
to
my
be
gun.
Awful.
No, I understand what you mean. You liked it because, listen, I rarely trust reviews. There was a time where you could go to the movie theater, and sorry to get us so off track, but this is pretty important. There was a time where you could go to the movie theater and it was not possible to have a bad experience. You wouldn't even see previews. You would just go to the theater, see what's playing. This sounds interesting. Go see it, and you were going to get your money's worth. There wasn't such a thing as a bad film. Even a bad film was passable. This day and age, because of some of the shit that's getting made, it's like, you know what it takes to get me to go to the theater these days? Well, obviously a mask and a vaccine, but generally speaking, it's like to walk into a Star Wars experience, and I saw every Star Wars film at midnight. Same. After the ones that I was able to, like the prequels, episode 7 and episode 8, I saw at midnight on the opening night because it had to be done. Like I needed to be there. To go there and get disappointed on that level, there were a couple cool things in the film. Seeing Mark Hamill on screen, I don't give a shit how.
I was going to ask you about that. I wanted to ask you about that. See when he turned around at the end of last Force Awakens, mate.
It's painful. It was painful to know that I was going to have to wait 2 years to find out, but to see that come to fruition, hey man, that's the same experience we lived in the theater, and I don't think there could have been anything cooler. In fact, here's how I perceived it. You see the look in his fucking face when he looks at the lightsaber in Rey's hand. All the history, all the experiences he went through, all the suffering he went through, it was so in his face, and it almost brought me to tears.
Mate, and his hand, even when he takes his hood off, and his hand, just a reminder there that Darth Vader chopped his hand off, man. Oh.
And just because that fucking lightsaber, the possibilities. Now, with all that said, this is not a Star Wars podcast, but
it can be.
Are you both watching Mandalorian?
Yeah, I am.
I've started. I think I'm 4 episodes in.
We're actually good friends with someone that's in it, Misty Rosas. She played Quail, and she also plays the recent egg. The frog.
That's incredible.
Yeah, she's been on the show.
That's incredible. That's awesome.
Yeah, she's really nice.
So I believe The Mandalorian is going to make up for. I mean, you saw what.
Yes, I've said it. I have said this to everybody.
Boba Fett was a payoff 40 years in the making, and which was literally one of the coolest fucking things I've seen in Star Wars lore since maybe Revenge of the Sith. But I feel like we're going to get Luke Skywalker.
Oh, that would be pretty cool. Where Grogu's concerned. Do you know what? I'm kind of. It was cool to see. Did you follow the canon?
Hang on.
Did you follow the canon? You know
what? I'm aware of the canon, but I don't follow it very closely. Clone Wars, I'd seen a few episodes, but I know enough about it to know.
Ahsoka
Tell
Tano
him he
is
can put his headphones back on.
come back. Ahsoka Tano, that was quite a cool payoff. But Jon Favreau is get him to make the next 3 trilogy if we need it.
Hopefully it's all going to be set right. But it fascinates me to watch George Lucas get interviewed to get his general philosophy of where films are going, why they're going, and how it's being hurt. And Hollywood's going to have to revamp and come back to some semblance of abandoning political correctness or having clear lines of where it's going to be exercised, and the things nobody wants to watch, and where to, be more lenient. Because if they don't, they already have their asses handed to them, and it's going to get worse.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of actors, directors, people in the business that say certain things in public to kind of toe the company line that they don't truly believe, and it's just making a farce of the entire industry.
Getting an actress
100%.
to apologize for playing a role
that
may have offended people that it really shouldn't have offended, if you think about it. But that's the world we live in right now. But as all things, I think balance to the Force shall be restored at some point, because people pay with their money, and I think the shitter it gets, the less
they speak with their money. They vote with their money.
Yeah, exactly. It's supply and demand. So I think we will get full circle with where things are going in the world of cinema. And
people pay with their money. Truer words have never been spoken. Nothing gets past you. You got a little bread there. Nothing gets past you, Kevin.
I say shit like this all the time on the show, Jordan.
Beautiful though, man.
So many times I just sit here going.
No, but that's it's those. The beauty about like just having a comedic sense is listening, and also just good acting in general is listening. And one thing I've learned is that when you're in a conversation with someone, you can tell that they're thinking about what they want to say and not listening to you, because you can't do both.
Yeah.
So you might be talking to someone, you may be saying something very important, but you could just observe. If you're paying close enough attention, they're not listening to you because they're thinking about what they want to say.
Yeah.
But in the same time, in the same tone, good acting and good comedy comes from listening.
Yeah.
It's like to be able to listen, and the listening aspect, let me tell you something, observation is one of my favorite hobbies. I just sit down and watch society and watch people and have conversations, and the craziest, most obscure shit that I'll hear, I'll record it in my phone to myself. I'll leave myself a note.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was doing that.
Porn is comedy on a level that, like, it's so absurd. There's so much fun, like, hilarity in porn, because everybody's engaged with it, even if they pretend like they're not.
Hey, step brother.
The difference between...
It's like she's stuck in the dryer again.
You're totally not related. I can tell. Stop lying to me. You lost me.
Mate, I've never been asked to empty the dryer and put my whole fucking head in it.
That's fucking hilarious.
How do you get stuck in a dryer anyway? Some of the scenarios.
Like, you want to go to him and say, listen, have you not watched porn? People get stuck in these things. Don't put your head in it.
We were actually writing. Did we not write? We were writing a little script that we were kind of pitching to the BBC. That's like a broad. You know what the BBC is?
He knows.
Yeah, big black cock. It's a big thing in the porn industry.
Well, we were writing a bit of a script.
British
right?
Broadcasting Company.
yeah. And we made it about this guy that's going for what he thought was a job interview, but it's actually a porn audition. And it's like one of those, in retrospect, he's talking to the camera about it, and he's like, well, I could tell something was off the minute I walked in and his face was pixelated.
Pixelated.
Just silly wee things like that. That's what gets us.
It's fucking hilarious. Those are the subtleties, man.
Right.
The subtleties make the great comedy and make the great comedic moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can't.
Like there's a moment not a lot of people see in Best Thanksgiving, but like they don't catch it because it's right under the radar. But when Margaret and when Larry and Margaret come over and they introduce themselves to Kevin and Brad, Margaret says something to Brad like, so handsome and so debonair.
Yeah.
And Brad's like, it's really nice to meet you too. And under his breath, he goes to Kevin, he goes, what the fuck does debonair mean? Because why would Brad know what a word like that means? You know what I mean? So it's those subtleties that, like, you know, like the pixelation, that's fucking gold. That's what's funny.
Absolutely. And again, it's reality. Because tell me that you ain't seen porn where a guy's face is pixelated, right?
Yeah. And my favorite thing about porn, like I went and got a job in a restaurant from 2014 when everything went wrong with the film until earlier this year before I switched to a different job. I worked almost 6 years in this restaurant, and one of the bartenders is from Detroit, and we have a similar sense of humor. And we would always make jokes about the absurdity of porn. And one of the things is, like, you know, how the sounds the guys make when they come. It's like, you know, when normal guys come, they kind of just have their moment to themselves. They don't make all these noises. You hear a guy come in a porno?
It sounds like he's dipped his toe in the bath when it's too hot.
It's the funniest thing in the world. I literally, like, I've taken voice notes and recorded, like, I listen to porn and hear a guy come, like, and then I'll send it to Rich, the bartender, and he'll just fucking losing shit laughing because he'll be in public playing this thing on a speakerphone. You know? Or like there's the female orgasm in the American female orgasm, and then the Russian one. For some reason in America they're all like, ah, and in Russia there's always this oh. Watch a foreign porno, they're all like, oh. And I'm like, that because anal is more prominent in the foreign markets. It's just those are the sounds you make when someone sticks, you know. Anyway, but it's fucking absurd and sad, but it's funny.
It's great storytelling.
That's true. This podcast really went off the fucking rails.
No, it all kind of correlates to itself. Everything is a story, from porn to Star Wars. Everything's a story. Really, everything.
Yeah. Of course it is. Going to the toilet's a story. Farting during a podcast is a story.
Yeah, we'll send you that clip. True. It's fucking hilarious.
I can't wait to see it. No, but you know, all jokes aside, it's these are the things, you know, listen, and if we're going to go back to comedy, because I know you guys are definitely inclined in that way, it's these kinds of experiences, you know, like if we were sitting, you know, around a bar at a pub or in, you know, around a fire talking, these are the kind of like cathartic experiences and conversations that make the stuff that ends up making millions of people laugh. They don't come from nowhere. And some of the most prolific stuff may be years gone by because they don't make the kind of stuff that resonates with society today. But eventually I think it's going to have a renaissance. It's going to go back to, because it has to survive. It's going to go back to a brand that's not going to insult people's intelligence. The subtlety will be reintroduced. You can discuss any subject matter within its subtleties in a comedic fashion, even in dramatic fashion. You know, these are that we look at art as a reflection of society. We find ourselves in every single film and every single experience. Mostly not in porno because we can't handle what those guys can do. But we see ourselves in most artistic interpretation. And, you know, I don't think Best Thanksgiving is the most outstanding movie in that regard, but many films, if you have a good experience, it's because you were able to relate to it because it spoke to some fiber in your being that said, yeah, that's me, and I know what that feels like, and I know what that guy's all about.
Absolutely.
So, end of sermon.
Yeah, that's good. So what do you think? I mean, we've kind of touched upon it. I imagine now it's just kind of waiting to kind of see what opportunities arise off the back of Best Thanksgiving Ever. Do you have any other plans you said you'd kind of went into stand up a little bit. Well, what's kind of next on the radar for you to kind of achieve and knock out the park?
Well, I'll tell you what, in terms of just the stand-up experience, I got to do quite a bit very quickly of that. And the more I did it, the more I reached an incredible amount of reverence and respect for the art form, because that shit gets harder as you continue to do it until you get to a point where you're proficient enough where you kind of you know what the routine is, or you know exactly what the beast is that you need to slay, which is called stand-up comedy. So I shied away from that at the end of last year, right around this time, just to kind of regroup. And then I changed jobs working for a different company out here. And then all of a sudden the pandemic happened. So there was this great opportunity to regroup, and Hollywood's been on pause. Things are getting made, but very exclusively and very low key. So during the time that it's been on pause, I've been trying to get back into writing more and really tackle this best Christmas ever. If nothing else, just to say that an exercise in writing again, just to be able to write more and say that, okay, I've got something potentially down the pipeline to show for. Because Best Thanksgiving is my visual resume. Best Christmas or whatever else I write is going to be the spec for consideration moving forward. Yeah. And also because this new look, I've gotten some champions to sort of like go down the dramatic path and try to be the bad guy in every fucking sitcom or movie. So, we don't know what the entertainment industry is going to materialize to be moving forward, but the hope is, because so much saturation has been wiped out by COVID, people going back home and less population in LA, it might open up doors for the Jay Seals of the world and the David Pauluses of the world and a lot of the talented people that were involved in the picture that deserve to be working more.
Yeah. Jay was great, man. You really care. You actually really care about what happens to him, and I actually said that to Kevin in a very recent episode. If you don't care what happens to your protagonist, your movie's fucked. And you do give a shit about him because he's such a nice guy. And I can imagine he's not too dissimilar in real life,
Jay Seals is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. He's one of my best friends, especially since we went through this together. And when times were tough, he was one of the few people that there were people that stood, by me and were there when we were going through the firing range of shit coming in and complications. He was there with me the whole way. And in a lot of respects, I owe him the film ever getting made, because it was an initial conversation with him in maybe 2012, like right around now in 2012. I sat with him at a coffee shop and I said to him, look, I've got this script and I need some help getting this done. And he's the one who introduced me to the gentleman who helped me rewrite the script or work on it and kind of make more of a story out of it, and introduced us to ultimately the production team, et cetera, et cetera. And he was the conduit that made a lot of that work and come together. So, gentleman of the first rate.
Yeah. It'd be cool to see him come back. It'd be cool to kind of in the future to see, because obviously Best Thanksgiving ever follows his character, really. But it'd be cool to see him in the movie, but we're following someone else. And he's just kind of, you know what I mean? He has his place. That you don't really see that with a lot of movies. Can you name a movie trilogy or any kind of series of movies that the characters are all there, but each movie follows like different characters while they all still kind of remain? I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah, no. It's and I'll tell you what, I don't know that it was intentional. I just know that one of the limitations of the story that was initially written was that at times you don't know who's this about. Is it about Brad? Is it about Kevin? And by the end of it, I think what's beautiful with all the naysayers in the development process, what acting has taught me and what really is true is that no matter what you do, the audience will justify it. Put it out there and the audience will come up with a narrative. You guys had a narrative about Jesus. One of you thought he was a hobo. One of you thought he was Brad's intuition or spiritual connection or whatever, and you're both right, but you justified it. And that's what any competent art does, is it allows for the audience to justify it. That's why in performance as an actor, I mean, that was my grounding initially. My acting mentor, who actually helped me, I put in about 24 hours with him to practice for Brad, to rehearse, just to make sure we made the right choices and executing what we wanted to execute, he always preached, the audience will justify it. As long as you're committed, you'll never be bad. It may be wrong. You may be the wrong performance, but you'll never be bad. And you get a lot of that in the film.
Yeah.
So, you know, and the thing is that Brad is an archetype, and so is Kevin. Kevin is the nicest guy in the world. And there were criticisms before the opening scene was in there that he's got no redeeming qualities and he's a lovable loser, but he's just a loser. There was that criticism before we put in the opening scene where you get to see him in happy. And then there's a criticism that Brad's the biggest asshole that ever graced the screen. But as you guys observed, these guys represent real ideas and real people, real elements of people. Some of the best guys I know.
And you see that Kevin does have a lot of heart as well, because you see that when he tries to save his new girlfriend, when he meets her and she's being abused, and he knows he's not going to really be able to fight off the bad guy, but he goes ahead and attempts it anyway, because that's the kind of guy that he is.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I love how quickly he gets punched as well. There was very little back and forward. It was just douche.
Yeah. Oh, and you want to know something? It's funny that you say that. So one of the things that someone wanted to do, that there was someone involved that I'm not at liberty to discuss, but someone involved in the development of this project that fought me tooth and nail to make this thing more of a romantic comedy and really water down a lot of the venom that the film goes with. So, for example, this squirt scene was the film. That was the whole reason the film was written.
Yeah.
He wanted to change the squirt scene to make it something completely different. And I was like, that's kind of a golden goose. You don't touch that. And then he wanted to water down the dialogue in the lead up to the squirt scene, which is funnier than the squirt scene itself, which is like the ridiculous exchange. All this football innuendo that was really said in real life relating to a sexual act.
Yeah.
And so one of the things he wanted to do was he wanted to give Michelle a voice. So the second time, instead of seeing the hammer, the guy from the gym banging Michelle, he wanted Kevin to go up to the door, pretend like he's going to knock, and Michelle opens the door. And she basically explains herself. And I knew at that moment, if we give Michelle a voice, that completely delegitimizes anything in Kevin's plight. Whatever he suffered, whatever the audience cared for him, if she give her a voice, it doesn't make us misogynistic filmmakers or male chauvinistic pigs. It's the story we're telling. Michelle is the catalyst for all of Kevin's strife. And Michelle is also the catalyst for a known life experience. Most guys date a girl where they have to learn a lesson before they know the difference between a good woman and someone that's not going to bode well for them.
Yeah.
She's that lesson for Kevin. That's a broader theme. But the second you give her a voice and she's like, well, I'm just not into you, and I've decided I want to go in a different direction, then what the fuck do we do with the rest of the movie?
Yeah, that totally makes him feel like a loser. Do you know what I mean?
No, that you can't redeem that. You know, that's why I was adamant. She can never have a voice. She represents a different idea. She's the catalyst for his strife, and he has to get over that himself. It's about him.
Yeah, it totally felt like that. Absolutely.
It's yeah. I mean, it's one. I mean, we've got the password, so watch it again. And it's. I hope that it does get a wider distribution and more attention.
Yeah, it deserves it.
Brother.
Absolutely deserves it. I mean, we'll share it. I mean, we shared it when G had announced that that it was available on Amazon Prime, and then we kind of just chatting about it. But our audience are movie watchers. That's what the heart of what we do is. I mean, we dip into other things like this, the supernatural, good conversation points. But at the heart of what we are, we talk about movies. We meet actors and actresses, directors, writers, and so the people that listen to us look for things to watch. So after watching this, hopefully, that's the only thing. I mean, we've got an American audience, but we do have a strong UK audience. So it'd be ideal if you find it on YouTube, so you can You can purchase it on YouTube to watch it.
After we're done recording, we'll hash that out for any details in terms of like the legalities of sharing, quote unquote. But we'll figure out a way for sure, and hopefully there's a foreign distribution channel. Maybe, a la carte. I own the foreign distribution rights, so I can make a deal. Hopefully, maybe off the heels of something like this, there'll be an audience for it.
Fingers crossed.
I can, for $150 or whatever whatever fucking currency you guys use out there, you can, we'll be able to get it distributed out there somewhere. But there's things on YouTube. Social media has some things, some clips. Actually, we were really fortunate. A kid did a social media campaign for us this year. Did I send you the bad reviews clip?
I don't think so.
Amazon Prime had like some really critical reviews, and so I did like a mean tweets version of that, where basically I read like some of the reviews and answered them back. I'll send it to you. It's on I think it's on Facebook. And there's an Instagram and things like that. So, but no, I appreciate the support and the kind words, guys.
No,
hopefully we can get this thing to prominence.
Absolutely. I mean, it'd be nice to see that, and I'd still like to see what happens next. So even for that, that would be.
So would I.
A great reason to get it pushed forward. Well, it's been an absolute blast chatting to you about this. We'll need to get you back on when we do another Star Wars special, because we've done a few of them, and you definitely seem like somebody that we would like to chat about Star Wars to. Sorry, I know J-Mac will set that one out, but we definitely.
Yeah. Well, we have each other's contact information now, so
absolutely. Yeah. So we'll get that in the bag.
And also I would say that if we ever get an opportunity to kind of revisit Best Thanksgiving, the three of us, I would love to get you guys to get Jay Seals on a podcast with you. Yeah. Because one thing about him, he's a different perspective on the whole thing, because he came in mostly as an actor, but his ability to tell a story about behind the scenes and shit is otherworldly. He's such a fun storyteller, and you guys will probably get a kick out of it, hearing his take on certain things that I may have told you about.
Yeah, hell yeah.
If that's something you can facilitate, we'll jump on that.
Yeah, I can facilitate anything, including the porn stars that were the strippers in the strip club.
Hell yeah. No, I'm kidding. I am.
Sky's the limit, guys.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
Run! Go! Get to the Jibber Jabber!